Hi, my name is David Albert, and I'm the board chairman of Friendly Water for the World in Olympia, Washington. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes the use of biosand water filters and other health and sanitation practices around the world. And with me today is my friend Adrien Niyongabo from Burundi, the heart of Africa. And he is the co-founder of the Healing and Rebuilding Our Communities program in Burundi. And also with me today is Ginny Stern, who works for the Office of Drinking Water for the state of Washington. She's a hydrogeologist and treasurer of Friendly Water for the World. Adrien, welcome to Olympia. I know this is your fourth time here.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
I'm very happy to be with you.
And I thought maybe you'd like to explain a little bit about healing and rebuilding our communities, or what problems this particular program is meant to deal with in Burundi.
HEROC, as you have said, Healing and Rebuilding Our Community program, was just a program, just a model of training we put together as Africans in Burundi and Rwanda as a way of trying to find a way of getting healed from the trauma we got from the war or killings that happened in our countries. As the history tells, Rwanda witnessed genocide in 1994, but 1 year before that, in Burundi, we experienced massive killings where around 200,000 people died, Hutu and the Tutsi. Those two groups, some would say ethnicities, but I just say groups or identities, have been just in an ongoing conflict since 1960s up to even now.
So really similar to the situation in Rwanda. Many Americans know about the situation in Rwanda, but not about the situation in Burundi. And the two countries are right next to each other.
Yeah, sometimes they say they are brothers or sisters. No, it's true, but because in each of the two countries we have the same identities, Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. And the proportion, Hutu are the majority in both two countries, Tutsi is second, and Twa the minor group.
So how does water, which is what we do, Friendly Water for the World, making water safe, how does that support the work you're doing with your communities on reconciliation?
That project comes to offer a way of keeping with reconciliation and the healing process. How? When people have been trained in our HEROC workshops, together they seek for healing. They seek for reestablishing or rebuilding broken relationship. In 3 days, not everything is repaired. People need just to get time together. People need just to find something that will just gather them. So by doing, working or building these biosand filters, folks come together by just looking for materials, by making domos, just watering them and washing the sun, making sure that's correct, joking around, remembering about what happened when they were just suffering. We have different groups. We have ex-combatants who participated, in what happened as armed people. We have demobilized soldiers who were in the government army, and we have civilians who didn't participate. So those three groups actually you are the ones who caused this. You are the one who did this. But when they're just working together, they find a way to joke around, which is a good way.
So they come together to build the filters, but in the process of working together, they begin to explore the hurts and the legacy and find a way forward.
Exactly. That's one of the way of...
See, and you have the trauma from the war, but you also have the trauma from waterborne diseases. Typhoid and cholera and bacterial dysentery, all of which can be dealt with by the biosand filters?
Sure. As we say in my country, Burundi, same as in Rwanda, that the river doesn't kill, meaning I can just drink the water from the river. I can drink water from the rain. I don't care if it's treated or not. I'm sure it's not going to cause me any harm. But we have lost so many people, especially children, and we didn't know that it was just coming from waterborne disease.
So the sentiment is inaccurate in many places, that the water isn't safe and people get sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to make it a true statement
Sure.
by treating the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard that in the areas you work, as many as 300 children under the age of 5 out of 1,000 born will die before the age of 5, most of them from bad water.
I could just say there are more because when kids die, families are not that encouraged to go to declare that someone had died.
So it's not even in the death registry, there's so many.
People are so upset and they don't find any interest to go and declare somebody who died.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many, no more than that.
So infant mortality, childhood death from unsafe water, challenges in the communities where people represented different factions and sides before coming together to make clean water to share, to make their children grow healthy together.
Absolutely, just to allow kids to have a better life, being healthy, not just missing classes, by getting this treated water.
Right.
Families would be sure that their children, even adults who are still living with them, are not going to fall sick from contaminated water. And that will save them money, that will save them time, that will give them joy, to see.
Well, I know that when I went to school, if I had a bellyache, I wasn't going to be able to study well. I wasn't going to be able to learn well. So just imagine what would happen if you had a bellyache all the time.
See?
It would be almost impossible to learn.
Hard to concentrate to what teachers are saying.
Right. And I know that there is something, I work in public health, and there is something called parasitic stress, so that when a child's brain is developing, usually before the age of 5, the energy that could be going into brain development is energy that's being used to fight off parasites, typhoid, cholera, bacterial dysentery. And so that energy is not available to build children's brains. So by the time they get to school, they are already behind.
Good point. Good point.
In Washington, we are blessed with good clean water that most all of us have access to.
Yeah.
And both David and I work with the Department of Health and have worked with the Department of Health on drinking water. And we talk about safe and reliable water, meaning that it is there when we need it and it is safe to drink. And so it's interesting to see that in your project, as you work on rebuilding communities, you're focusing on the same thing, that it is there when I need it and it is safe and reliable.
Safe and reliable, good. We can say also in Burundi, it's safe and loving water.
But it's friendly water.
It's
Friendly water, exactly. With these groups who have been at war, hunting actually. Hunting one another.
You will have to tell us how to say friendly water in the language Kirundi.
Amazi amagenzi.
Amazi, amaganzi.
Amazi magenzi. Magenzi friendly.
Magenzi.
Amazi
magenzi.
I like that.
There has this taste, not normal taste, because it has the compassion.
It has
It's
sweetness.
sweetness, yes, coming from the heart, from forgiveness, coming from the trust. That's I would say amazi magenzi, and an ex-combatant offering such water to somebody who they have been fighting in the bush and so on means a lot.
Good.
Water is often in many cultures used as a metaphor. So that, for example, we talk about the water of forgiveness.
The waters of life.
And water is a promise. And when I think about the work that we try to do, Friendly Water for the World tries to do, it's not that it's only providing clean, safe, reliable water, but we're making it possible for communities to become convivial, to be good neighbors to each other, to become friends. And as we reach out from this part of the world, we make friends. I've made a very good friend here, my friend Adrien.
Yeah.
Even in this area of Tumwater in Thurston County where we are today,
Yeah.
our history is tied around readily available, clean flowing water. It's a history here called artesian, which is water that bubbles from the ground.
Mm.
And the early community here came around the watering places where the water just bubbles out of the ground, and they would meet there and get water to take home and do business and trade. And the community that we live in right now was really formed because the water was there. So it makes perfect sense to see a community that has been facing so many challenges, both medical and health and community-based, look to rebuild community with water.
Yeah, exactly. That was, I just picture Mutaho place, community, where we started this biosand filters in the very rural area of Burundi the first time. You know, I remember Mutaho, the first time I went there after the war was 1998. Oh, it was really a mess. Houses destroyed, people have left their properties. You could not recognize. Slowly people came back one by one, and then now life is just coming. I can just see people, folks, going to the center, where they make these filters. That's where they go to get something which gonna allow you to have treated water. Amazi magenzi. That's I just have a dream, for people who come from all parts of Burundi and to Mutaho, and they're gonna just form this community.
So from the ashes of a community that was destroyed by the strife, becomes the nucleus to offer to other communities the resources to be safe.
I've always hoped, even, I think about the U.S., of course, where we have soldiers coming back who are suffering major trauma from the war. And while people like the Veterans Administration are working very hard to try to provide good physical care and psychological health care, it's still one-on-one. It's usually one person with one person. It's very important work, one person and one person. But it would be even better if we could find out here ways for people to engage a community in healing. There is individual healing, but there is also community healing. Sometimes I think that Burundi may have a great lesson to teach us.
When you talk about the service that the ex-combatants offer to their community, people who were potentially their enemy before, they come back, and as a part of their healing, they are offering the device to provide clean water for another family. So they're consciously giving. Perhaps you might talk a little bit about the project that you're working right now with Friendly Water on, which is where we here in the States are working with your cooperative there, where people there are making filters.
With the first training and the first building, construction of the filters, and people try them, and they test the water, how good it was and how different it was from the one they used to drink. Some of the folks in Mutaho were able to fetch water from the tap, but when they filtered water from the tap and tested different from the one they used to say, I said, no, these materials are so well made. There is something inside. Of course, they're the ones who made it. So they know that.
True. It doesn't rely on someone else to make it. They made it themselves.
They made it. So from there, community members asked for at least one in a family of 10. When we say family in Africa, you don't just mean my kids and my wife. Many of them will just leave a circle. You find the parents who have, let's say, 10 kids, and the argument, grown-up kids,
Yes.
children who
With
got
their own
married.
family, yes.
Yeah, they make their families.
And then orphans. 11% of Burundians are orphans.
Relatives will just come and stay with me. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a part of my family. They have a space.
Yes.
If I have just better situation, I just welcome them, and they are my children, and my nephew, my cousins. So we're together. So these people are just asking. No, we know that this guy, this man, once we went to church, we weren't just drinking water, and we went to Pastor Sarah, for example, which is the one who got the first filter.
Pastor
She got the
Sarah.
first filter.
She got the first one.
Pastor Sarah's an old friend of mine, although we've never met.
Then Susan married, and they had people married, and then she was given the first filter. So she's a pastor. Everybody
You
who
come
just
to get her water from Pastor
Yeah.
Sarah's house.
Yeah, and from there people say, "Oh, how can we have that filter that Pastor Sarah has?" Because the water from Pastor Sarah is something else. So that's how we end up having so many demands for these filters.
Right. I know that we have now, we have stories from 100 families that are willing, this is a place people are poor. I mean,
Yeah.
the per capita income is about 125
Poverty
US
is
dollars
high.
a year. Poverty is high. And yet they are willing to spend $27 each to buy a biosand filter for their home. And basically they've asked Friendly Water and our supporters to come forward and match that. We actually raised some additional funds so that for people who cannot afford anything,
Yes,
or
David.
for orphanages or clinics, that we can build additional filters. But for most Americans, $27 is not an awful lot of money. But for the people,
1/5 of my annual income, if you said I have to put up 1/5
fifth
of
of my
money,
income for
we would be
Right.
we would be amazed. And here they are. They see the value of having clean water, and not only did they see it, but they found a way to build it for themselves.
right.
Yeah, let me tell you one of the motivations that really push or bring these people to invest in these filters. You see, you have family of 5, and not all of them. Let's say 3 or 2 of them just get sick
Yeah.
of typhoid, or you have to take them to the next clinic. And at the clinic, they may not have enough medicines.
Yes.
So you're gonna spend money waiting for the medicine to come, and you don't go to work or cultivate. So the other kids will just go be starving at home.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, as we heard from Pastor Sarah, Celine, and others who have now the filters, that no typhoid, no diarrhea anymore, we will do all we can to pay for that money, so that we may get the filter in our homes, so that we may not go to the clinic for a week, 2 weeks, when we just miss time to.
Right.
Yeah, we're not at school, not at work.
Right.
Can't sell things at the market. So
All the stress.
And the way we look at it here for Friendly Water for the World here is, we look at the needs in the world, and we look at all the money that's given for charity for water in the world. It's wonderful work, but it's not enough. We have to make partnerships, local partnerships with people in other parts of the world, where they can take responsibility for making sure that they have clean water.
And that we provide support, education, and financial support and training to get it started. But that the success is what your community puts in, and the commitment is because it makes a difference in their life.
Yeah.
It's not hard to convince people to do it because they see the difference.
Let's say that I have been privileged to have this chance to be in the States, as I'm working with Friends Peace Teams. But when I do this initially, I help people to access such a kind of filters, I want them to own
Yes.
this. I want them to be creative on how they can maintain this. That's how I really do all I can that Mutaho Cooperative can just stand on its own.
And Adrien knows that I also want people to paint their filters, because I want it to be the most beautiful thing in their homes.
True, you have just to, let's say, to express this joy you have, by decorating the filter. Say, I don't know, I'm gonna just put eyes. I'm gonna put
Yeah, we have one filter in Olympia that has eyes and a nose, so.
Yeah.
But we have seen.
And then what my kids are gonna draw on the filter, I just give them a quiz.
Exactly.
Give them each one side.
True, I have 4 of them,
Okay.
so there you go.
And maybe we should introduce everyone to our filter,
Yes.
because this is a model of what the filter
Right.
looks
This is
like.
not the actual filter. This is
This
the
is scale.
actual half-size scale model
Yeah.
So real
from the
fil-
inside.
So, and you can look through it, and what it has is at the very bottom, it has gravel, large cobbles, and some medium-sized gravel, and then a fine grain. In this case, it's the white material that's a sand that's of a fine grain, and then water would sit above it, and there's a plate here that allows us to keep from disturbing the top layer here.
It's kind of a diffuser plate. It rains.
And the way the system
Can we
works is
recover?
water gets poured into the top and it fills this whole thing, and the pressure of the water on top pushes the water that's in the sand out the hose and through the top and into a clean container to collect the water. Exactly, and the process,
No electricity, no
no
moving
moving
parts.
parts. This is built in country out of cement. Gravel and rocks and dirts are found locally, and people work to separate the coarse material from the fine material.
You spend hours.
And they spend lots of time
I've done it.
shaking sand
Washing.
and dirt, washing to make it clean so that it's uniform. And over time, over a few weeks of operation, in this top layer of water, friendly bacteria form that help eat other bugs. And so all
Now
together,
they wouldn't be friendly if you actually drank
you
them.
wouldn't want to drink them, but right now they're our friends because they eat the nastier bugs. And so over the time that water moves through, there's digestion that goes on. Bugs get killed by other bugs.
In fact, you kill most of the typhoid, cholera, large bacteria, E. coli,
Many things
Shigella,
get
right in
eaten.
the top. Right in the top.
And then what isn't killed off here gets filtered out as it moves through the sand. So that, and it also, there's no oxygen in this section because it's always full of water. So anything that survives the filtration, many of it, the bugs, particularly biological things, die because of lack of oxygen. They tend
Right.
to live best in oxygen environments. So that by the time you get through the filter and out the top over the life of when it operates, these filters are, when run properly, are between 95 and 98% effective at removing some of the most dangerous contaminants that make people sick. Cholera, diphtheria, typhoid, E. coli, things that are in surface water that people may be drinking, and they don't come out. And the operation of the filter is very minimal. All you have to do is keep it clean, pour water in, keep a clean container to collect the water in, use it. The best thing you can do for it is to use it regularly.
Because it keeps those friendly
It
bacteria
keeps everybody happy.
happy and eating other bacteria. One of the interesting things, it works on viruses too. The sand actually, it's not beach sand, it's sand from a high river bank or for a quarry pit, and it has sharp points. And the sharp points of the sand have a slight electrical charge,
That's
I learned.
the fourth way that water's treated.
Right, and what happens is when viruses go through the top, viruses like hepatitis A. I once had hepatitis A from bad water in India, so this is of concern to me. Hepatitis A gloms on, the electrical charge gloms onto the sand, and because there's no light, no air, and no food,
It will
it
keep
dies.
it long enough to die.
It dies right there.
So it works kind of like the filtration does. And so what you create is this wonderful environment in a very small place that fits in a house that will make your water biologically safe to drink, to protect your family from diarrhea and many of the other waterborne
And it tastes better,
diseases.
too.
And it tastes good. It also, under certain circumstances, can be modified to impact other aspects. But where we use it, mostly where we try to encourage people, is for the bacteriological purity. Because in some places you might have water that comes from a pipe, but it's not treated before it gets there. It may come from a community well. It may come from a riverbank. or from a pond where animals are fed as well,
Right.
because water is where you need it,
True.
but it may be there, but it may not be safe.
One of the things that happens is, we go on the internet and then we're always looking for data on water, and we'll look at Wikipedia, of course, like everyone else. And we'll look at the data, and you'll have this data from the United Nations that talks about improved water sources. And then you go to the places where they have the improved water source. And improved water source can mean, for example, simply that it comes out of a tap. But it doesn't mean that the water is safe to drink.
Not from the standards we're used to.
And there are people, I know, who told me in Burundi, where the tap water has worms
Sure.
and typhoid
Yeah.
and coming right out of the tap. But if you read the United Nations data,
That's
you
an
would think
improved
that's
water.
an improved water source.
That was one of the more powerful stories of the people who were asking for filters and wanted to buy them, was the young man who was talking about the fact that they get water
Yeah.
through a pipe, but that he was drinking water and there was a worm in his glass, and it came from a pipe. And when I shared that story with some people here, they were just amazed, and it stops everyone in their tracks, because we just assume if it comes out of a pipe here, it's safe.
Not always.
And that's not always true.
Everywhere, no.
And then the other part is, in many places where, in communities like Mutaho, where the water doesn't come in a pipe,
Yeah.
people walk a long ways to bring water to their house, and if the water they bring isn't safe, they're still going to get sick.
They have open containers.
Exactly. So
Those basins.
exactly. So they carry water from an unsafe source. It's water, they need it, and they either drink it without treating it, or they spend a lot of time boiling it, which costs firewood, which is you have to go gather wood. So it's by having safe water in the house, you reduce the amount of time you have to spend cooking.
Yeah.
You save money because you're not buying bottled water if you were. You have a ready supply if someone is ill or sick, to not make them sick again. Clean water, so that if they're recovering from an illness, they're not being reinfected by the water that they're drinking. And so,
And one of the things that, of course, goes with something like a biosand water filter is very important to have good personal hygiene and community sanitation. I know you teach that.
We do.
Because it's important.
Very, very important. We need to remind people how they needed to keep that in mind. Because we not just offer them the filter, but we needed to know how to maintain the water clean.
exactly, and sometimes it's as simple as the water you collect in this bucket is not the bucket you use for clean water,
Yeah.
because that was dirty, or as simple as, here's how you handle household sanitation, how you get rid of waste, how to make sure where you dispose of waste is different than where you keep your water. Washing hands, one of the most powerful things that people can use. Those are all part
With
of
soap.
the training, soap, and teaching people about how powerful, how important that is to be healthy. And if you're going to spend the money for clean water, spend the time to do the rest of the practices.
And
to
then, of
keep
course,
your
keep your
family safe.
animals away from the water source.
Exactly.
No, we're gonna just hire people to just walk around the community, have just 2 days per week doing such a kind of
Helping people know how to use
they
it.
know, yeah.
I mean, I know I've seen places in India. I've done biosand water filter work in India, but people will have the tank, which will be by the temple usually, but they'll wash their animals in the same tank that they're going to be used for bathing and to drink. Well, Adrien, I'm wondering if there's anything further. We're getting to the end of our time here. If there's anything else you'd like to say to our friends here in Olympia and the rest of the world.
Just to say how delighted I've been, how joyful I am, and how happy to find such warm, welcome-hearted heart, just to really join hands to provide a better life, a hope.
Yes.
A hope for a new
And we have a word for that he has taught me.
Yes.
Turikumwe.
Turikumwe.
Turikumwe means we are all together. Turikumwe.
Turikumwe.
Thank you.
Yeah.